Why don't we just have the guys introduce
that's fine.
themselves?
Yeah, do that. And Dan's filling in for me because he's willing.
So yeah, let's just start right here. Take a moment to introduce yourself and maybe say why you decided to self-publish and why you've stuck with it.
Okay, my name is Milo. On the cover of my books, you're going to see Milo James Fowler. So that's what you look for on Amazon. I started out very traditional, all traditional, totally anti-self-publishing. Started out with short stories, got a lot of short stories published around the world in different publications. And then I decided, well, what do I do with them now? After the rights reverted to me. So then I started self-publishing them. And then I got a little taste of how wonderful it is to not split royalties and to, well, except with Amazon. But anyway, so now I'm more of a hybrid. I've always got at least one project I'm working with a traditional publisher, and I've got one project that I'm doing on my own. And I write science fiction, fantasy, humor, and horror, and I try to stick them all together.
Great.
My name is J. Daniel Sawyer. I self-published because Del Rey wanted rights I wasn't willing to sell. I produce audiobooks, I run a small publishing company, and I write science fiction, fantasy, mystery, and a little bit of horror around the edges, and quite a lot of nonfiction.
All right. My name is Ryan Williamson. I started out trying to go down the traditional path. I had a couple of offers from smaller presses. Their contracts were absolutely disgusting. The amount of rights that they wanted, their royalty splits. It was. I actually had a contract lawyer tell me to walk away from those offers. A couple of years later, I wrote my novel, The Widow's Son, and again I went the traditional path, and I had a editor of no small renown, actually, tell me that my book was unpublishable because I'm a white male author and my characters were all minorities, and that it would be seen as cultural appropriation and stuff like that. And so I said, well, what the hell, I'll just publish it myself. And yeah, so far it's doing pretty good.
I'm Russell Newquist. I write Catholic action horror. I got into self-publishing and our own small publishing house because honestly, it was the risk of it. It sounds silly, but the major factor is that the main publishing houses for a first-time author offer very low advances, but it is an advance. And if you don't earn it out on your first book, they basically won't publish you again ever. And very few authors do earn it out on their first book. So it was if my first book sells like crap, I'm still in the game, was my play. And I'm still in the game. So it paid off.
Great. So I'll just kind of open it up to, whichever one of you guys wants to answer first. What's the biggest challenge by choosing to go this route?
Well, you have to learn 2 entire careers instead of 1. Right? You're not just a writer, but you're also a publisher, even if you're just publishing yourself. So you have to learn a second profession as you're going. And that actually changes the calculus in terms of what kind of stuff you might normally put in a trunk earlier in your career. You don't want to do that because you need the practice learning to publish. You can pull it back later, but the last thing you want is to be at a position where you've got your 1,000,000 words finally out of the way, you've got a novel that's pretty damn great, and you publish it dead because you don't know what the hell you're doing. So it affects, there's a bidirectional effect I've found for everything, but it does make it all a lot more interesting.
Yeah, the biggest challenge I found. Oh, sorry. Do you have a question?
Sorry, very brief. When you say you publish it dead, do you mean dead free publishing?
No. Publishing dead is an old industry term for when you publish a book in such a way that it's guaranteed not to sell because the packaging is bad or because you have no idea who the target demographic is or whatever else like that. No problem.
I was going to say, for me, my background actually is in graphic design, and before that, people might remember the term desktop publishing. So I'm fairly well versed in InDesign and Photoshop and all those tools. So that part of the publishing aspect, the formatting, the cover creation wasn't really a problem. But for me, I think the biggest struggle has been marketing. One, I'm extremely introverted, and I hate tooting my own horn.
You're faking it well right now.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I've worked many years to overcome it. No, just self-promotion sucks. I hate it. And it's been a long, hard slog to try and figure out the marketing aspect, and I'm still learning. I mean, ironically, a lot of my career has been spent in marketing, so I understand the concepts, but when it comes down to marketing myself, I need to fire my PR person.
I'd like to just add to what Ryan said there. I don't come from a background in graphic design. I'm a software engineer like half the rest of the crew here. But marketing is still the hard part. And one of the things is, especially if you're a software engineer and have a decent income in your day job, pretty much everything else can be bought. You could buy a good cover, and honestly, for not that much money. You can buy a good editor. You can buy good layout in your books. You can buy good cover blurbs. We don't buy most of those things anymore. We produce a lot of them in-house, but in the beginning we did because we didn't know how. Marketing's hard to buy. It's hard to buy because the people who are really good at it are usually off making millions doing their own thing.
And there are very few people who are very good at it.
That's true.
Bill Goldman, the writer of The Princess Bride, famously said about marketing and targeting, nobody in this business knows anything. And he was talking about the movie business. It's equally true of publishing. There's an art to it. It's very hard to make it a science.
It is. And the other thing about marketing is it's a numbers game, right? Like the best marketers in the world strike out 90% of the time.
Oh, that's way generous. 99.9.
Way generous.
Yeah. If in a targeted ad campaign, if you get one click through in 10,000, you're doing damn good.
And that's the best guys in the world. So, for those of you out there who are worried about it, you're probably doing better than you think you are, as sad as that may feel.
I had a conversation with someone a couple weeks ago who works with a lot of successful independent authors, and just to give you an idea of the marketing budget out there for the really successful self-publishing authors, and I don't have the personal budget to do this yet, but their advertising budget is at least $5,000 a month. And they will, heavily advertise on Facebook and Amazon for periods of time to get, because with Amazon, the trick is you want to get, you'll see your book listed in a sub category, right? Like my book's listed in Western horror, right? And so, yeah, it's awesome that I'm in the top 20 in Western horror, but that's like super niche, right? I'm still like 51,000 in, Amazon or whatever. But the trick is that you pour money into your advertising if you can afford it, and you get yourself into the number one in Western horror, and that will skip you over into being in the top bestseller list for horror. And then you pump more money into it until you can get your book to number one in horror, and then that puts you into the next category. And then finally, once you're selling about 4 million books a year, then you're an Amazon top author. So that's kind of what you're struggling against.
And this is why
being an Amazon top author is important if you've got your books wedded to the KU, the Kindle Universe exclusive distribution platform, because they pay bonuses to the slate of authors who've gotten the most page reads on loans. The downside of that is you are only in Kindle for ebooks, and it's a short term, it's a much more viable strategy because if you can hit the marketing on Amazon right, you can make your career take off faster. But Amazon is making enemies, and there are a lot of other ebook markets out there. I know people who are making 6-7 figures on Kindle, and I know people who are making 6-7 figures wide. Very different marketing strategies.
And that's what makes Amazon so happy. I mean, they created the whole Kindle self-publishing so they could make money. You know, they're making money on everything we sell. They're making money on, I haven't done the ads yet, but they're making money on all these authors that are shoving money into their ads. I've always subscribed to the theory that money should flow to the author, but I can't live on what I make as an author. So obviously I'm doing something wrong.
Well,
But
we should probably talk about Audible-gate as well.
yeah.
Well, I'd counter that for a second. I'd say I absolutely believe that money should flow to the author, but like you were saying in the beginning, when you self-publish, you're not just an author.
Yep.
You're a publisher.
Yep.
And publishers spend a lot of money putting a book out. And so there's that dichotomy there where it's like you want to avoid the snake oil salesmen that are trying to profit on you being an author trying to become successful, because there's a whole cottage industry on, you want to be an author. A lot of people are making a lot of money off of courses and things like that for, how to become become a bestseller in 6 minutes a day and stuff like that. There's a lot of money in that.
Yep.
So you got to avoid that. But on the other hand, you do have to spend money for blurbs and covers and honestly, advertising is part of it. I engage in Twitter, and I use Twitter as a marketing tool partly. I've noticed that my sales on Twitter are they're one-offs. They're interactions. I'll chat with someone.
Yeah.
We'll have a good interaction.
That's the thing. Sales and marketing are really different things.
Yeah.
And this has been something that's been very difficult for me to wrap my head around because I was trained as a salesman and I was very good at it. And I started off self-publishing with podcast fiction and did very, very well. And then I got into the self-publishing ebooks world, and as soon as the podcast stopped, everything went flatline because my entire orientation is toward high-touch interaction. I know how to get people interested in the conversation. Designing an ad campaign that targets the faceless demographics, that's a long learning curve for me. So.
Well, and unlike a podcast, Twitter is not scalable, right? Mm-hmm. Like, if I sell a book for every good interaction I have on Twitter, that's awesome. And I love those sales because those sales are based on human interactions. Those they touched me. I made a connection with someone, they bought my book, that's awesome. But it's not scalable.
Well, and that's really the crux of the issue because I like the thought that all the money should flow to the author, but if you're a self-published author, you are a business. And unless you're Tesla, every business has a marketing budget.
Well, if you look if you break out the accounting, as the publisher, some of the money flows to the author, and some of it flows out into packaging and other market presence stuff.
And, most businesses spend quite a bit on marketing. It's just part of being in business. And one of the things that's distinctive about the book market that you really have to understand if you're going to get into it, and it's exactly what these gentlemen were saying over here, some businesses are a low volume, high profit margin item. You're selling if you sell a car, you're selling something for $40,000, you make a high profit on that. You don't sell a huge volume, but you make a good chunk of change per item. Books are the opposite. You make a very small amount per item, and you have to make it up by selling a lot of them. And that's hard to do on an individual touch basis, with the sales mentality. It has to be more of a marketing mentality. You need to be thinking, how am I going to sell 100 books, not how am I going to sell 1 or 2? Because, a typical ebook on Amazon for most indie authors ranges from $2.99 to $4.99. Amazon's keeping 30% of that, so you're getting $70. If you're the author, 70% of $3 it's $2 a book, right? That's not very much.
So it is worth pointing out that that's more than twice what you would get off that same book if you went through a legacy publishing house.
Right. Well, and as a publisher, we have the harder problem, actually, because we have to leave enough for you guys as the author to make some money, and we've got to get all our marketing expenses and our cut to make some money out of what's left in the middle. And that means you have to sell a lot. That's the only way you can make it work
And
to do it.
it'd be worth elucidating the difference between a small press and a large press here, because we're all like micro presses.
Very micro.
The way that a large publisher makes money is not through having a bestseller. It's through collecting lots of IP that then they can then throw against the wall to see what'll stick. And they hold the rest. The reason the contract terms have gotten so bad is a lot of the publishers have been acquired by megacorps that also own companies in the film industry. And in the film industry, when you buy a script, you never let it go. You never sell it on, because someday somebody might want to license it. And in the meantime, the fact that you have it and you're not making any money on it means that you can take a depreciation tax deduction on intellectual property whose intrinsic value never really changes. As micro-publishers, we've only got a certain amount of access to that kind of game because we've only got the IP we've generated or directly licensed from other writers to work with. A lot of the same tricks apply, but as a single writer or as a small press with just a few writers, it takes a long time to build up the catalog that makes it more likely that you're going to get picked up with licensing from gaming companies or studios. Or there was one writer back in the 1920s during one of the Masonic crazes who got a secret society in one of his fiction novels licensed. Oh no, it was 1890s. It was the guy who wrote Ben-Hur. One of the secret societies in Ben-Hur was licensed to make a real secret society. And
I would love it if someone did that with my book.
Yeah,
That would be-
and in the long run, that's where a lot of the money is. But you do have to build up the audience and the exposure so that you attract that kind of attention.
I now have a new goal as an author.
So wouldn't that be great?
Just to take a step back, we've been talking a lot about marketing and sales after the book has already been published. What about crowdfunding and effectively pre-sales? Do you guys have experience with that or
I'm
opinions?
currently running a Kickstarter right now. It's my second Kickstarter. The first one was for a full cast audiobook that I licensed from another writer. Did very well. I'm currently crowdfunding a book that I'm going to be giving a talk on tomorrow evening. It's called The Secrets of the Heinlein Juvenile. It's an in-depth study of the Heinlein Juvenile form as a literary form. There's a proof copy floating around the house here you can take a look at. We're doing pretty well. We're at 4x the goal right now. I'm hoping to figure out some way to pour gas on the fire and get us to 10 or 12. But we got 3 weeks to go. It's done really well. What I did is I offered exclusive chapters that aren't going to be in the publicly released version, and then as the campaign has gone on, I've been scrambling to come up with stretch goals. So now I'm obligated to writing an extra book and
Now, why did
some
you,
other fun stuff.
why did you choose to open with that instead of just writing the book and then putting it on Amazon? Like, what's the advantage of doing a crowdfund?
Visibility is one of the big things. So one of the issues with Amazon is you get something like 100,000 books get published there every day. So you put your books up in the marketplace and people have to find them. You have to direct attention toward them. Kickstarter has both enough of a cultural cachet, everyone knows what it is, and enough of a native user base who are just looking, they've got money to burn and they're looking for interesting things to throw their money behind. And the last few projects that were on there that had Heinlein's name attached did very, very well. So I had this book that I had written and I was getting ready to publish it, and I noticed that the Pursuit of the Pankara had been crowdfunded, and that the Citizen of the Galaxy graphic novel had been crowdfunded, and I went and looked at the campaigns and said, well, shit, a lot of Heinlein fans come here. I'd be dumb to leave to go and try to find these people individually instead of going to where there's a nest of them.
So
Yes.
there's
sorry.
there's pros and cons on Kickstarter and crowdfunding. So Your specific question about Amazon versus Kickstarter is that we found in our experience that they're actually different markets. So you're not bleeding from one market, from the Amazon market, by going on Kickstarter as a general rule. You're hitting a totally different crowd of people. But the downside is, the crowdfunding's not a magic bullet. You still have to do the marketing to get your crowdfunding campaign funded, and to get a group out there. You can't just fling it up there and let something happen.
It is easier in the sense that events are easier to market than chronic features. And a book on sale, you can get at any time, but a time-limited event, much easier to market.
So.
We've got a question.
What you just said there was just what I wanted to mention. I back your current Kickstarter.
Thank you!
And the reason why is that as a Kickstarter project is something with a time limit. It's something that's happening right now. It's not just inventory. Hans has books. I'll get Hans's books eventually. Because on Kickstarter, if I want it, I go right now. And also, I found out about yours because some of the other suspects around here were talking about it on Twitter. An event people will talk about. If everybody's just constantly saying, buy my course, or book, excuse me, then it's just one giant ring. But an event,
There's excitement.
Yeah, and if you want to know about crowdfunding, Travis is the guy to talk to. His Escape the City, oh my God, he did what, 112,000 on that?
Wow.
His goal was like 3,000. It was ridiculously low, and he just went to the moon with that thing. And I think it was his third. I think he crowdfunded his first 2 science fiction novels as well, but I haven't looked at those.
Yeah, I guess I get. Oh no, go ahead.
What about your podcast? You get many people directed from the podcast?
To the crowdfunder? Oh yeah. I got quite a few backers come from the podcast to the crowdfunder. So.
Multiple of you guys have talked about being both a writer and a publishing house. Have you seen any efforts towards a sort of more consolidated, alternative publishing world? Or is it just like, I'm going to be a publisher for my books, you be a publisher for your books? Is there any benefit that could come from sort of melding these things?
Yeah, I have a few friends in the writing industry who have attempted that, where you'll have half a dozen or a dozen different independent authors, and they'll come together under one masthead, and so they'll create a publishing company, and they all kind of pitch together to be one publisher with several authors, and they've had various degrees of success in the personal ones I've seen.
Yeah, I was going to say, all the ones I've seen, have looked really good, but they've all run out of steam within a year or two. So
yeah, that's the biggest problem.
There's some piece of the secret sauce that nobody I know has cracked yet.
I'll also say, at a place like BasedCon, I think this is worth noting. One of the things that I've noticed is kind of a trademark of the conservative movement and the conservative side of the house is that most of us are kind of independent do-it-yourselfers.
I am not.
Wait, who are you calling conservative?
Did you say you have a small micro-publisher of your own, right? So there tends to be a very large amount of, well, I'm just going to do my own and screw everybody else. And I don't really mean that in a bad way, but it is kind of a thing that a lot of people are just off doing their own thing.
It's like the old job about trying to get a libertarian party together.
Right.
Yeah, you're herding cats or monkeys or something.
You just get to a point. I mean, I had an agent for 2 years, and I was not happy with him. He submitted my work to all the major publishers out there. I got the same information back from all of them that, nope, there's no market for this. I guess I had too much scripture in my time-traveling detective novel, and the main character was white, so there's no market for this, etc. And then the publisher I had been working with, a small press in Texas, they said the same thing, but they were willing to buy my intellectual property and use it for something that they want to do later on down the road. And I said, no, thank you, I'll hold on to it. And they said, but you didn't even hear our offer yet. I didn't want to hear the offer. I was like, this is my book. I'll do what I want with it. So, like you were saying, being more independent, I published it. It didn't sell great, but at least I still have it. And once I learn how to do Amazon ads, I'll be able to get it out there in front of hopefully more people. But it's still my intellectual property that way.
We've had a question very patiently waiting back here.
All of this is great, and please, I mean this as, please take this as charitably and politely as possible.
Oh, this is going to be fun.
How incestuous is this independent marketing? Is there a viable market beyond selling to other up-and-coming indie authors?
Well, I would
Yes.
say the first thing is to get away from hashtag writing community,
Yeah.
because that is the most incestuous hashtag ever. I mean, if you, it was ridiculous. The vast majority of accounts on hashtag writing community are authors who I wouldn't even say every second post, I'd say every post is an ad for their book. And then everyone who follows them retweets the damn thing. And if you follow any of these people, your timeline is just filled with just ads. And like one of my personal policies is I will not promote a book on my Twitter account if I have not read it and enjoyed it, or at least personally know the author and know them to be reputable. I'm not going to just retweet something because I'm part of some writing community or something. So yeah, it's very incestuous. And it is hard to break out of that.
In terms of... Sorry,
A lot of that is the fault of the authors, though. Hans will laugh because I was having this conversation with him less than a month ago. Most of the authors I know spend half their time trying to sell their book to other authors. Don't waste your time selling books to other authors.
The only value in selling your book to another author is if they're going to give you a pull quote and you want access to their audience.
And yes,
and that's it.
And that requires them to be decent audience of their own, right? So, but here's the other thing though: is it's not just one. It's a small group, right? It's you're not going to make it big by selling to other authors just based on the numbers. But the other problem is that 90% of the other authors are just like you. They're not selling very well either, and they have no money. So they're not going to buy your book.
Well,
Don't waste your time. Go to the audience. Go to the readers, not to the other
And that's
authors.
where having a newsletter is very important,
very good.
because those are your readers. They're not going to be fellow writers, most of them.
Travis was talking up the importance of excellence last panel, which I'm all behind. But once you leave the writing desk and you put on the publishing hat, this is all about money.
Yes.
And if you mistake that it's about respect, you're going to die broke. And you want to be, and to that end, you just don't want to be focusing on the day-to-day numbers. You've got to learn copyright law. The copyright handbook put out by Stephen Fishman at Nolo Press is indispensable. It's updated every year as the law changes. You should read it every year. The amount of rights vested in a single short story is unbelievable. And the writers I know that do best are also best at exploiting their secondary rights. With one exception, who sells so well that it's disgusting. So for a writer who sells with absolutely no marketing, very, very well, every goddamn time, to a very wide audience. I'm not talking just wide genre speak, I mean wide ideologically. He gets reviewed in PJ Media, and he's a member of CEFWA, and gets lots of good press on that side of this aisle too, is Nathan Lowell. He's a very good friend of mine. He makes I can't tell you how much money he makes, but it's the kind of money that anyone could retire on, and he has. And he's done all of it simply with, I think the sum total of his marketing efforts was, in the early days, he podcasted a couple of his books as podcast fiction. And then since then, he records a 10-minute or 20-minute talk when he walks in the morning just about what's on his mind. He never pushes his books. He's never put $1 into advertising. But he was very, very good at noticing his audience when they showed up and at keeping them informed of what's going on. And that kind of low-key effort, if you've got the if you can grow the chops for it, and he has, can pay off very, very well. Of course, you also have to be a damn good writer, and he is amazing.
What
Lowell.
what avenue did he use
Wrap
to
things up about there because
reach his
we have
audience?
any-
He started off with a couple of podcast fiction books, and since then he's just been self-publishing.
But is like with a newsletter to? Because you were saying
he
you were
does.
saying
Yeah,
he like he kept his
Yeah, he
audience
does.
in touch.
He does a
so.
newsletter, and
Yeah,
for a
that's-
while he did a blog. And he
That's
moved
the
it all
one
to
thing
his
that I
newsletter.
haven't tried yet.
Yeah.
I have a question for the panel. The one thing that I haven't tried yet is a mailing list or a newsletter. How many of you do that, and you know how often do you update?
And this will be
your
our last
people?
question. 'Cause
Yeah.
we got to wrap things
Oh,
up.
okay. Sorry.
Mine's 2 months old. I put it off and put it off and put it off, and a friend of mine finally sent me a book called Newsletter Ninja, which it's probably going to date pretty quick because a lot of it's tied to the current tech, but it gave me enough of a finger hold to get into it. I've been doing it for 2 months, and I'm actually seeing a response. I can't believe, I've been collecting names for years, but 2 months of regular newsletters, and I'm actually noticing that I've got a little more sales than I was having, and it's rather startling.
All right, so I think we're going to wrap it up there.
Cool.
Thanks, Trevor, and the rest of the guys.